Something strange happens the moment someone earns their first $100. Not because it's a lot of money. It isn't. You could spend it in just a few minutes without even thinking about it. But for a tiny group of people, that first $100 quietly becomes the beginning of everything. And the strange part is, almost nobody notices the moment their life actually starts to change. Years later, people look at successful individuals and assume they were simply lucky. They say they had connections, better timing, or opportunities that nobody else had. But almost no one stops to ask a much more important question. What actually changed after that very first $100? Because the answer isn't the money itself, it's something far more powerful. Most people believe wealth is built by doing one simple thing, saving more money. It sounds completely logical. Save a little, invest a little, repeat the process for years, and eventually you'll become wealthy. But history keeps proving that real fortunes rarely begin that way. The truth is much more surprising than most people realize. That first $100 wasn't valuable because of what it could buy. It was valuable because it changed the way one person looked at the world forever. Suddenly, money wasn't just something to spend anymore. It became something that could grow, multiply, and create new opportunities. That's when the entire game quietly changed. Now imagine two people earning the exact same $100 on the very same day. They have the same amount of money, the same starting point, and the same opportunities in front of them. Yet, just a few years later, their lives look completely different. What happened between those two moments? The first person celebrates. They order their favorite food, buy a few things they've been wanting, maybe upgrade something they already own. Within a week, the money is completely gone. Life goes back to normal, and nothing about their future has really changed. It feels good for a moment, but the story ends there. The second person does something much less exciting. Instead of asking what they can buy, they ask a simple question. How can I make this money come back with friends? Not twice as much overnight, not a miracle. Just one small step that allows the money to start working instead of disappearing. That tiny question creates an entirely different future, because in that moment, money stops being the final goal. Instead, it becomes a tool, almost like an employee that can work even when you are resting. It's a small shift in thinking, but over time, that small shift changes almost every decision that follows. Here's the strange part. Millions of people ask themselves how to make more money, but only a small percentage ever escape the cycle of constantly starting over. It's tempting to believe they are simply smarter or more talented, but history keeps destroying that idea. Some of the wealthiest people started with almost nothing at all. Others were born with every possible advantage and still managed to lose everything. So if intelligence, talent, and luck aren't the full answer, then what invisible force quietly pushes people onto completely different paths? That's the mystery we are about to uncover. And surprisingly, it has almost nothing to do with money itself. Think back to the first time you learned to ride a bicycle. At the beginning, every movement felt awkward. You focus on the pedals, the handlebars, your balance, everything at once. It seemed impossible to do naturally. But after enough practice, something changed. Your brain stopped overthinking and riding became automatic. Money works in a surprisingly similar way. At first, every financial decision feels stressful. Every dollar has a job. Every bill feels urgent. And every paycheck disappears almost as quickly as it arrives. You are constantly reacting instead of planning. And without realizing it, that cycle quietly becomes your normal. Most people spend their lives solving today's problems. Pay this bill, cover that expense, wait for payday, repeat the same routine again next month. It's like playing an endless game where you are always focused on the next move but never looking at the entire board. Meanwhile, a much smaller group begins asking completely different questions. Instead of wondering how much they can earn next month, they start asking, what system could keep producing income even when I'm not working? That single question changes the direction of every decision they make from that point forward. And this is where the paths begin to separate. One person keeps trading time for money. The other slowly starts building assets that that produce value long after the work is finished. It doesn't happen overnight. In fact, the difference is almost invisible at first. But year after year, the gap becomes impossible to ignore. Here's what actually changed after that first $100. It wasn't the size of the bank account. It wasn't the income. It wasn't even the opportunities. The biggest change happened inside their mind. Their identity quietly shifted from earning money to learning how to make money work for them. That idea sounds like something you'd find printed on a motivational poster or an expensive coffee mug. But underneath the cliché is a powerful truth. Once your identity changes, your habits begin changing too. And your habits eventually shape the future that everyone else calls success. Instead of asking, "Can I afford this?" they begin asking a much better question. Will this create more opportunities tomorrow? One question focuses on spending, the other focuses on building. The words are only slightly different, but the results become dramatically different over the years. Every decision starts compounding. A book instead of entertainment, a skill instead of another gadget, an investment instead of another impulse purchase. None of these choices seem life-changing on their own, but together they quietly build momentum that becomes almost impossible to stop. And then you realize something surprising. The real advantage was never stocks, crypto, businesses, or real estate by themselves. Those are simply tools. The biggest advantage was learning to think differently before having a lot of money. Because once your thinking changes, your future starts changing with it. But there's an even deeper layer hiding beneath all of this. The greatest advantage wasn't investing, starting a business, buying stocks, or owning real estate. Those are simply tools anyone can learn. The real advantage was something far less obvious. It was having more choices. And those choices quietly changed the direction of an entire life. Imagine standing in a hallway with only one door. If that door closes, you are trapped with nowhere else to go. Now imagine another hallway with 20 different doors waiting to be opened. Every new skill you learn, every meaningful relationship you build, and every smart decision you make creates another opportunity that didn't exist before. Most people believe wealth is measured by the size of a bank account, but in reality it's often measured by the number of options available to you. The freedom to choose where you work, how you spend your time, and what problems you decide to solve. More choices quietly create more opportunities, and more opportunities often create more wealth. Now take a step back and look at the bigger picture. This isn't just one person's story anymore. It's happening all around us every single day. The economy rewards people who build systems. Technology rewards people who own assets. Businesses reward people who solve the same problem over and over again without starting from zero each time. Meanwhile, millions of hardworking people are rewarded only while they are actively working. The moment they stop, the income stops too. That's why two people can work equally hard, put in the same number of hours, and still end up living completely different lives years later. Hard work absolutely matters. There's no shortcut around that. But the direction of your hard work matters even more. It's like rowing a boat with all your strength while someone else quietly switches on a powerful engine. Both are moving forward, but one reaches the destination much faster with far less effort. So what really happened after that very first $100? There wasn't any magic, no secret club, no hidden billionaire handbook. The only thing that truly changed was the way one person viewed money. And once that perspective changed, every future decision slowly started moving in a completely different direction. They stopped seeing money as a reward to spend and started seeing it as a tool to build something bigger. They noticed opportunities that most people ignored. They became comfortable with short-term sacrifice because they understood the power of long-term leverage. Little by little, they stopped chasing paychecks and started building engines that could keep producing value. Here's the unsettling part. Somewhere in the world today, someone just turned their very first $100. To everyone else, it looks like an ordinary day. Nothing special, nothing memorable. But that tiny decision they make next could quietly shape the next 10 or 20 years of their life without anyone noticing. Maybe that's the biggest difference between people who build wealth and people who never do. It's not where they started, it's not how much they earned. It's the moment they stopped seeing money as something to spend and started seeing it as something that could build a future on its own. Because sometimes the smallest number in your bank account becomes the biggest turning point in your entire life. If this changed the way you think, subscribe, because some of the biggest financial stories are hiding in places most people never think to look.